Santa doesn't bring gifts for guests, my mom said when my daughter asked why she was the only one without a present. My sister's kids laughed. I just kissed my daughter's forehead and we left. Then I just took one action. 5 hours later they started screaming. It was Christmas Eve when my daughter learned the kind of people her grandparents really were. She was 5. That perfect age where Christmas is still magic and Santa is as real as the moon. We pulled up to my parents' house around 4 p.m. My daughter was holding the gingerbread cookies we'd baked that morning, still warm in the tin, and she had that excited little bounce in her step. It was our 3rd Christmas back in town since I moved home after the divorce, and I had stupidly let myself believe this year would be different. Everything looked perfect. The porch was strung with lights, the tree glowing through the window, laughter inside. I had presents for everyone like always. Thoughtful, wrapped neatly, each with a tag. My daughter and I had even handmade a few things for the grandparents. A framed photo, a painted mug. You know, the kind of stuff little kids are proud to give. Inside, my sister was already there with her twins, and they were buzzing around the living room like caffeinated squirrels. Her husband was loudly retelling some story no one asked for, and my mother was in the kitchen pretending she didn't see us walk in. I had that immediate sinking feeling, the same one I'd gotten since I was a teenager, that quiet, invisible coldness she always wore around me. But I smiled. For my daughter. Dinner came and went. It was fine. My father asked passive-aggressive questions about my work like he always did, and my mother made a joke about how I still haven't found a real man. The twins screamed, my sister drank too much Chardonnay, and my daughter kept looking over at the tree. She kept whispering, "When do we open presents?" Eventually the moment came. The kids gathered around, tearing paper, squealing. There were dozens of gifts under that tree. My daughter waited patiently, eyes shining, a little nervous smile on her face. And then one by one the gifts disappeared. The pile got smaller, and I felt my chest tighten. My daughter looked up at me and said quietly, "Did Santa forget me?" Before I could say anything, my mother cut in from across the room. She said it casually like it was just a fact. "Santa doesn't bring gifts for guests." The whole room laughed. Not even a cruel kind of laugh. Just indifferent. Like this was normal. My sister's kids were holding new tablets. One of them pointed at my daughter and laughed. I stood up, picked up the cookie tin, and told my daughter we were going to go look at Christmas lights. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't make a scene. We just left. In the car, my daughter didn't say anything. She stared out the window, still holding the little mug we'd painted for her grandma. I reached over at a red light and held her hand. That's when I made the decision. For years, I tolerated my parents' behavior. The way they talked to me. The way they compared me to my sister. The way they minimized everything I did. But until that night, I'd never seen them aim it at my daughter. I didn't realize how much hate they'd kept under the surface, just waiting for a smaller target. They owned 49% of the business I built. Not because they helped build it, but because I'd been too trusting. I'd brought them in years ago when I started it, just trying to create something for the family. I still ran everything, still made all the decisions, but they collected a generous check every quarter just for existing. That night when I got home, I logged into our business dashboard. I drafted an email. Then I contacted my lawyer. It was Christmas Eve when my daughter learned the kind of people her grandparents really were. And it was Christmas Eve when I decided they were done living off of me. I didn't sleep the night after Christmas. Not even for a second. I laid there in the dark, listening to my daughter's soft breathing from the next room, and stared at the ceiling like it was going to give me an answer. It didn't. But I already had one. I'd spent years bending myself into shapes for people who didn't care if I snapped. Years keeping things civil. Swallowing insults dressed as jokes. Letting my mother pretend she was the center of the universe while I worked 70-hour weeks to keep a business alive that she never lifted a finger to help build. But she'd made a mistake. She forgot that while she could humiliate me 1,000 times and I'd keep coming back, there was a line. And she crossed it when she did it to my daughter. I got up at 3 a.m. and opened my laptop. No dramatic music. No rage-fueled typing. Just cold, focused work. I started gathering everything. The original documents, the old partnership agreement, the email chains, the transaction histories. I flagged the parts where they failed to meet basic responsibilities listed in the agreement. Then I wrote the email to my lawyer. Short. Blunt. I told her I was ready. That morning, while the rest of the town was eating leftovers and pretending everything was fine, I was in my office signing the first set of papers. The wheels were in motion. By January 2nd, I'd filed the formal motion to dissolve their 49% stake in the business. I had proof that they'd done nothing to contribute for over 3 years. I had the documentation to back every claim. And most importantly, I had complete control over the operational side. I didn't need them. They just didn't realize yet that I knew it. 2 days later, I got the first message. It was from my mother. A long, furious voicemail. She didn't start with "What happened?" Or, is this about Christmas? She started with, after everything we've done for you. Then came the real reason she was mad. She asked how I could steal money from them. Said I was ruining the family, over a misunderstanding. That I was being dramatic over a child's toy. I listened to it once. Deleted it. Then came the guilt trip text from my dad. He said they'd been talking about doing more for the business next year. He said I should have come to them like family. I didn't respond. Not to any of it. Because I knew what this was. It was never about family. It was about power. They'd been profiting off me for years. Living comfortably off the income of a business they had no part in running, while I worked late nights and missed milestones with my daughter just to keep things going. And now because I took that away they were panicking. By the second week of January the messages stopped coming directly. They switched tactics. I got a call from my aunt asking if it was true I'd cut my parents out. My cousin texted me something vague about hoping I was still around for Nana's birthday. My sister started getting louder online. Little digs on Facebook and Instagram, passive-aggressive captions, photos with my parents and hashtags about loyalty and real love. They weren't subtle. But I didn't respond. I just worked. I kept the business running better than ever. I hired 2 new part-timers. Launched a new product line. Pre-orders exploded. And I didn't send one word to my parents. Because this wasn't some family squabble. This was the beginning of the end. And they had no idea how much more I was willing to take from them. By February my parents were no longer silent. They were strategic. They didn't call me. They didn't text. They didn't even ask to see my daughter. Instead they moved through the shadows like they always did, working people behind the scenes. Whispering, spinning, twisting the story to make themselves the victims. Started with the smaller things. An aunt who never usually texted me sent a message asking if I was feeling okay, and that she heard there was tension, but hoped we could all come together for Easter. As if it was just a little disagreement. As if I hadn't spent Christmas watching my daughter's heart break in front of a tree full of gifts that weren't for her. Then a message from my cousin, someone I haven't spoken to in almost a year, asking what was actually going on, and saying my mom told her, you'd had a breakdown and were lashing out at everyone. That's what they went with. That I was unstable. That I was ungrateful. That I'd cut my parents out of the business out of nowhere, out of spite over a misunderstanding. They never said a word about what started it. About what they did to my daughter. About that moment at the Christmas tree where a 5-year-old girl was publicly excluded by the people who were supposed to love her the most. Well, that part didn't fit their narrative. What they cared about was money. And now that it was gone, they were rebuilding their image to try to get some piece of it back. What they hadn't counted on was that I didn't care anymore. I didn't care who believed them. I didn't care who unfollowed me, who stopped texting, who quietly chose sides without asking what really happened. Because I'd made a decision. I was going to finish this. I called my lawyer and told her I wanted to go further. Not just remove my parents from the business, but remove any future claim they could ever try to make. Close every loophole. Scrub their names off every document. I even filed a name change request for the LLC, stripping out the family name that had been there from the beginning. A symbolic cut, but a clean one. And when it went through, I made it public. I didn't write a long emotional post. Just a clean announcement on the business page, thanking our customers for a record-breaking quarter and introducing our new branding, with zero mention of my parents. The next day, my sister posted a picture of my parents sitting in their living room looking heartbroken, with a caption about, watching your life's work get stolen from you. I almost laughed. My mother hadn't worked a single day in that business. Not when I was packaging candles in my kitchen at 2 a.m. Not when I was taking orders during contractions. Not when I was handwriting thank you notes while holding a baby in my lap. She was at brunch. But now that the checks stopped, it was suddenly her life's work. People bought it. I knew they would. She'd spent her whole life building that persona. The doting, exhausted matriarch. The selfless mother. She was so good at pretending she could have cried on cue in front of a judge. But I wasn't playing anymore. I didn't answer her. I didn't respond to the post. What I did instead was call a meeting with my accountant. Because the next move would be the one that would hit the hardest. The financial one they didn't even know was coming yet. I wasn't just cutting them off. I was about to erase every trace of them from the thing they thought they owned. And once I did, there'd be no way back in. Not through me. Not through lawyers. Not through family. Because blood doesn't make you family. Love does. Loyalty does. Respect does. And they didn't have a drop of it left. March came in like it was holding its breath. Cold, gray mornings, quiet phone, no word from my parents. Not even through my sister, which was strange. She usually couldn't go 10 days without throwing some kind of jab. I knew they'd heard by then. The bank would have called about the closed account. The quarterly deposit they depended on didn't land and they weren't stupid. Still, I hadn't expected the knock. I was in the shop late one evening, restocking shelves after a small spring launch, when my assistant told me someone was asking for me up front. I walked out expecting a customer. It was my dad. He hadn't been to the store in over 2 years. Didn't even look at the place when it expanded last fall. But there he was, standing in front of the register, wearing that stiff polite smile he used when he wanted something. I almost turned around, but I didn't. He asked if we could talk in private. Said it would only take a few minutes. Against my better judgment, I agreed. We went out back, behind the stockroom where the alley was quiet. He didn't yell. He didn't even act angry. He acted wounded, confused. Told me my mother hadn't meant to upset anyone. That I'd misunderstood the Christmas thing. That it had spiraled into something bigger than it should have. I stood there waiting. Then he said it. The thing I'd been waiting for since all this started. He said, "We didn't think you'd actually go through with it." That was it. The real truth finally said out loud. They didn't take me seriously. They never did. He started talking numbers next. A proposal to buy back in at 15% instead of 49%. Said they could be silent partners again just like before. I'd still have full control. They just wanted to be part of the family business. That phrase almost made me laugh. They wanted back in. Not because they cared about the work or the shop or the mission, but because they missed the checks. I told him no. He didn't argue. He just nodded slowly like he was disappointed in me, and walked off like I'd failed a test he didn't know he was taking. I thought that was the end of it. It wasn't. 2 days later, I got a call from our fulfillment center. Someone had tried to use an expired company vendor code to place a wholesale order under my mom's name. The code hadn't worked, obviously, but she'd insisted she was authorized. She wasn't. They were trying to wedge their way back in, sideways, quietly through any crack they could find. I shut it all down. Changed codes. Alerted our team. Locked up the last of the old databases that still had their names on anything. And then I decided to close the book completely. Buried in our original partnership contract, the one from years ago when I was still naive enough to think this business would bring us closer, was a clause I'd added almost as a joke. A separation clause. It stated that in the event of a full ownership revocation, the removed parties would receive a single product shipment in lieu of final payout, equivalent in retail value to their last dividend. Store credit. I activated it. The next day we packed a box. A massive one. Overstuffed with clearance stock from last season. Mugs with outdated logos. Discontinued candle scents. Old prints we couldn't even sell at the market. My warehouse manager asked who it was for. I said, final shareholders. We wrapped it in brown paper. Added a typed receipt, dated and signed. No note. No message. Just numbers. It arrived at their house 2 days later. They didn't call. They didn't text. But my sister, of course, made it public. She posted a photo on her Instagram story. Their front yard. The box split open. Half the contents dumped out onto the grass. Broken candles, torn packaging, one mug shattered near the sidewalk. The caption just said, "Some people don't know what family means." But what she didn't realize was that the post didn't make me look cold. It made them look exactly like who they were. Boiled. Bitter. Titled. The comments were mixed. Some people sympathized with her. Others didn't. But a few people messaged me privately, including one of my aunts, saying they were finally starting to understand what I'd been dealing with. That maybe it wasn't me who broke the family. I didn't reply. I wasn't doing this for approval. I was doing this to rebuild my life around something that wasn't rotten underneath. And that's when I realized the surprise wasn't that I'd finally shut them out. The real surprise was that it felt peaceful. Like something in my chest had gone quiet. Like I'd finally made room for better things. And they, for the first time, couldn't do a thing about it. By early April, my parents stopped pretending they wanted peace. They weren't trying to come back into the business anymore. They weren't interested in talking, meeting, clarifying anything. No, that part was done. The moment I sent them their last payout in the form of clearance candles and discontinued mugs, they shifted gears completely. Now they wanted to burn it all down. Started with the reviews. 3 one-star ratings showed up on the website in one night. No purchase history, no real names, but every single one hit a little too close to home. One said, "Untrustworthy owner, shady ethics, definitely not who she pretends to be." Another went with, "Products are decent, but be careful where your money's going. This business has a dark history." And my favorite? "Looks like this shop was stolen from the original owners. Sad." I didn't respond. Not because I didn't care, but because I could smell desperation all over it. I flagged them, took screenshots for legal, and moved on. But that was just their opening move. A week later, one of my wholesalers forwarded me an email. No sender name. No signature. Just a PDF attachment claiming to be evidence of unresolved ownership disputes involving my company, along with a fake warning that pending litigation may affect future orders. They were forging documents. They weren't even good fakes. Old branding, outdated numbers, wrong legal names. But the effort told me everything I needed to know. They were scared. Not hurt. Not sad. Feared. Because they realized I hadn't just walked away. I'd won. They thought cutting them out meant a silent separation. A slow fade. They didn't expect me to actually build something better. Something stronger without them. So they started turning people against me. My mother called a cousin I hadn't seen in years and fed her some lie about me being emotionally unstable. Told her I'd stolen from the family. Said I was spiraling since the divorce. I know this because that cousin, God bless her, sent me the entire text thread. Screenshots. Then my sister started the group chats. She added extended family members, people from church, even one of my high school friends' moms. I still don't know how she got that number. And began pushing this sob story about how I'd ruined everything over a minor holiday misunderstanding. Holiday misunderstanding. That's what they were calling it now. Not the moment they left my child out of Christmas on purpose. Not the look on her face when she realized there was no gift for her under the tree. Not the laughter. Not the smug smile on my mother's face. No, now it was just a misunderstanding. They were rewriting history in real time. Trying to make me the villain. But the part they never seemed to understand is that I had been quiet out of kindness. And kindness is not the same as weakness. Because while they were busy calling relatives and forging documents, I was making moves. I'd spent the last month negotiating a lease in the most visible corner lot in town. A space that had been vacant for years, but every business that tried to open there struggled. High rent, high visibility, high risk. But not for me, because I'd built a following. The shop was outgrowing its current space. Orders were up. Inventory was flying. I had the team, the systems, the demand. I just needed a bigger stage. So I signed the lease. Paid in full for the first 6 months. Started renovations. Quietly. Didn't post it. Didn't tell a soul except my daughter, who helped me tape up the first paint swatch on the empty wall. The only reason my parents found out was because a local blogger wrote a piece about the expansion of one of our town's fastest growing businesses. It went up on a Thursday. By Friday the first calls started coming in. Blocked numbers. Heavy silence on the other end. Then hang-ups. Then came the real escalation. My sister posted a photo of my old childhood bedroom, completely empty, trash bags on the floor, drawers pulled out. Her caption: "When people choose ego over family, all you can do is let them go." 30 comments. All the usual names. Saying things like "you're better off," and "she'll come around eventually," and "family is forever," even if some people forget. I didn't respond. But my daughter saw it. She asked me if we were still in trouble with Nana. I told her no. That we weren't in trouble. That we just chose not to be around people who tried to hurt us. And then, because I wanted her to see what real power looked like, I took her to the new shop. It was still bare inside. Walls half-painted, shelves in boxes, floor scuffed from construction boots. But it was ours. She ran to the center of the room and spun in a circle. Told me it felt like a castle. That was the moment I knew this was bigger than revenge. This was about building something they could never touch again. And the best part? I wasn't done. Because I had one more move left, and it was going to hit them where they lived. Literally. The thing about people like my parents is they never see the end coming. They're so used to pulling strings behind curtains, so convinced of their own cleverness, that when consequences finally arrive, real ones, they think it's sabotage, not accountability. By May, my new location was nearly finished. Fresh signage went up. Floors buffed, shelves installed, products arranged. We hosted a soft opening on Mother's Day weekend. And yes, I chose that on purpose. My daughter cut the ribbon. We served lemonade and cookies. Local press showed up. People came in waves. Customers, vendors, other business owners. They weren't just supportive. They were angry for me. Furious at how I'd been treated. Some even brought gifts for my daughter as if to make up for last Christmas. The whole town didn't pick a side. But enough did. Enough that word got back to my parents faster than I expected. That same night, my mom's car pulled into the parking lot. She didn't come inside. Just sat there. Watched. And then drove off. 3 days later they made their final move. I got a certified letter, the kind meant to rattle you. Inside was a claim. They were reviewing legal options to recover losses from what they called unlawful removal from family property. They cited emotional damages. I laughed. For the first time in months I actually laughed. They had no leg to stand on. No documentation. No ownership. I had every signed paper, every court filing, every date-stamped notice. So I responded the only way I knew how. Through their mailbox. See, months earlier, back when they thought I wouldn't fight, I bought the small property next door to their house. It used to be an old, crumbling garage. Nothing special. It had sat empty for years. The owner was an old man who was just happy someone wanted it. I bought it in cash. Had it cleaned, painted, repurposed. Now it was a pop-up extension of the store. Not just any pop-up. It was a discount outlet. Signs went up the day after they sent the letter. Huge banners. Branded. Bright. Visible directly from their living room window. Everything 50% off. New releases. Free samples for kids. Music on the weekends. The first Saturday we had lines. The second Saturday local food trucks asked to join. By the third, my sister's car was nowhere to be seen at their house. I never told anyone why I picked that location. But they knew. My mother pulled up once, midweek, parked across the street, sat with the engine running. My manager saw her through the window. Said she didn't get out. Just stared for a while. Then drove off. That was the last time either of them showed their faces. The lawsuit never came. Of course it didn't. It was just noise. The fake reviews stopped. The phone calls stopped. Even my sister stopped posting. The family group chat, the one I'd been silently removed from months earlier, was deleted entirely. A few relatives reached out privately, but most stayed quiet. Some because they were ashamed. Others because they were cowards. I didn't care. Because by summer, business was up 160%. My daughter was smiling again. And I was free. Completely. From them. From the guilt. From the shame I didn't realize I'd carried since I was a kid. People say family is everything. But sometimes family is a cage. And choosing to walk away from it, choosing yourself, your peace, your child, isn't betrayal. It's survival. So no, I didn't get even. It got better. And the last thing they saw when they looked out their window wasn't me begging to be let back in. It was the sign of the daughter who finally let herself out.